Welcome to the Made to Flourish podcast. We're so excited that you would join us in this conversation today. We do just want to preface this episode with letting you know that we had some audio issues upon recording this episode. And so you're going to notice the quality of this audio conversation to be a little bit different from our previous conversations, as well as there being a little bit of the audio going in and out. We tried our very best to get this as clear as we possibly could so that you could still catch this awesome conversation. And we hope that you will stick with us until the end and gain some new tips and tricks for you and your family. Welcome to the Made to Flourish podcast. We are so excited to dive into this conversation regarding home birth versus hospital birth. Both Meg and I have experienced hospital and home births. And I've had a method of different experiences in that realm, but we're excited to just kind of share with you our perspective and our experiences on what we've had in both of those worlds to hopefully give you a perspective and just some information on how you can move forward in making the best decision for you and your future birth. Enjoy. Welcome to the Made to Flourish podcast. Today we're talking about all things home birth. We're going to be going through how we got our husbands on board, what it was like delivering in a hospital versus delivering home birth, what the risks were, the rewards, the pros, the cons, we're getting into all of that. We would love to hear your guys' feedback. So as always, please mention it in our comment section, DM us, all the things that we can know what you guys really want to be hearing about. But Yasmina, you're actually preparing for your first technical home birth, even though you prepared last time for a home birth.
True.
And I have had 3 home births.
Yes.
You've had a lot of experience. You delivered in the hospital, you delivered a C-section hospital experience, you delivered at a birth center, and this time we're hoping for a home birth.
In Jesus' mighty name.
And Akeem was hard to get on board.
Yeah.
Your husband was harder to get on board for a home birth than mine was. Do you want to share anything that was really helpful for how to get your husband on board? Because that's a major question I get from a lot of women.
Yeah, I'm trying to think about how I got him on board. Well, I think honestly, starting at a birth center was kind of like a nice introduction. It was the gateway. It was the gateway to midwifery and home births. I think it made Akeem feel a little bit more comfortable initially with the concept. He really had this struggle with getting past the thought of the birth happening in our home and blood and just the whole thing. He just was really nervous about all of that.
I hear that a lot.
Which is
what'd you do with the water? What'd you do with the placenta?
Right.
Yeah.
And I'm not thinking about that at all,
Which you shouldn't honestly, you don't have to.
Yeah.
Because unless you have a free birth,
right,
your midwife and your birth team takes care of all of that.
Yes, exactly. And so we kind of met in the middle for the birth center. And because for me, I was I want better care. So if I can still get the better care and have some level of a home birth at this birth center.
It actually was a home birth.
It was a home birth.
It was your midwife's home.
Yes. And that's what I think we kind of discovered on the other side of that birth was we basically had a home birth. Oh, yeah. It was just in someone else's home.
Yeah.
Someone else's guest bedroom.
There's a less convenient home birth.
Yeah, because we had to drive 40 minutes.
I was
in transition.
I was there.
Meg was there through it all. And she was helping me on that car ride because that car ride was the worst of times.
That was really rough.
It was a scary time. I was very close to having a baby in it.
Oh, yeah.
If there was traffic.
I brought towels. I don't know if you know this. I brought towels and peroxide because I was I might have to deliver this baby.
In our tiny little Mazda 3, where we're just every bump and rock on this road we are feeling. And I am just God.
And you know what? Kim was as cool as a cucumber.
He was.
Me in that moment.
Yeah.
He's not stressed out about the playlist or
No. He's definitely not stressed out about the playlist. I was stressed out about the playlist. That's not So first birth was in the hospital. Second birth was in a birth center. And I think that was a good introduction for Akeem. And then third time around, I was you know what? We basically just had a home birth.
Right.
It was beautiful because Eliana's birth was perfection. It was just exactly how you would want it to be. And so Akeem was, still even reluctant after that experience. There was still just I think it's just a fear. I think it's a feeling of it's different than what we've kind of been told is the way to do things. And I think because it's unfamiliar, it feels more scary. But I think it's really just due to a lack of exposure, really. Because I think if all we were exposed to were home births, then it would almost be scary to go to the hospital, you know? Yeah. But our society has flipped those things around. And so then with Zion, we were all having this home birth. but my water broke at 36 weeks and 6 days, and I did not contract naturally. And then it ended up, long story super short, into an emergency C-section, which totally sucked.
Yeah.
And somehow Akeem is still like, on board to try this home birth thing again. I think you realize, because, in general, like when you go into labor, like there's time.
Yeah.
It's not like there's not time.
Right. I think that's a really good thing to point out.
Yes.
There's time, and a good midwife doesn't allow dangerous situations to persist.
Absolutely.
And I think a lot of women discount, and men will say home birth is off the table because what if something happens? And
Right.
a lot of times I'm like, if something happens, your midwife
it's gonna know.
and she's not gonna let you.
Right.
Like if
Because she's held liable.
Oh, she's held
She's not
liable.
gonna have that.
She doesn't want the trauma on her hands.
Totally.
She doesn't want the bills on her hands.
Right.
She doesn't want her reputation going down the drain.
Absolutely.
Like, they are very, it's almost like, I always say this, a good midwife, which most midwives are good, they will act on yellow lights. They will act on red lights.
Right.
So like if you're green light, everything's fine. You end up having a baby, whatever. Everything's great. If you start hitting these yellow lights, a good midwife would be like, I just don't feel comfortable letting this happen.
Yeah.
And if you're someone who is like, I don't want a midwife like that, I just want to deliver, then like have a free birth, that's fine. But the good midwife will actually like pull you aside and be like, this is probably not the right thing for you.
Totally. And I think like, you have to think about the process, right? Whether it's a hospital process or a home birth process. If you are having a hospital birth, you're still laboring at home.
Yeah.
You're still doing, it's not like you're like, I had a contraction. It's time to pack the bag and go. They're going to be like, go home.
Yeah.
They're going to tell you to wait.
All they're
until
gonna do,
you're,
all you're really going to do, like you could literally have a very similar home birth experience, just deliver at the hospital if you just wait long enough.
100%. And that's the goal, really. And ultimately, they want that for you too, because that's time and
resources.
exactly. So like there's time. And to me, what I think is more beneficial about having a midwife care is that during that time where you're like, I'm starting to have these contractions, I think we're in labor, you actually have a provider who is going to actually walk through that process with you, whether that's on the phone or in person.
Yeah.
You're getting a support that you actually don't necessarily get through a hospital birth, because when you have an OB, one of 7 OBs that you're potentially working with, you just let them know you're in labor and they're going to say, okay, cool. When you hit this amount, like come on in. You're not actually getting access to a doctor where you can ask questions and get support.
I was sending pictures of my armpits to my midwife because I was having these like weird rashes.
Oh, wow.
And she's like, send me a picture. And I'm like, all right, here's my armpit. And she's like, oh yeah, that looks like this.
Yeah.
And like, I would just would have like suffered with that whole thing. And she's like, it's probably your deodorant. It's my deodorant. But like dietary stuff.
Yeah.
And like, she's like, your midwife is you're getting really good care.
You're getting really good care. And that's like through the process, you're getting good care. And on the day of labor, you're getting good care. And that's, because what I was just saying was like more even like, if you think about like, okay, hospital birth versus home birth, the day of care, if you're concerned if something's going to happen, like the time between you starting labor and like you going into active labor, you're actually getting care during that time versus the hospital just says, come when you have active labor.
Right.
And we have no support for you until then.
Yeah. It's so
and so like to
also
me, it's actually safer.
Yeah, it is. It does feel safer. Also like, my midwife wants to know everything. So like, she's like, we're in constant contact from, by the time we're 38 weeks, we're talking very frequently. Yeah. And then when I think that like, I'm like, oh, I'm feeling crampy. She's like, let me know. Let me know. Just keep talking to me. Just talk to me.
Yeah.
You're not going to get that from an OB.
No.
Also, if you do have to deliver in a hospital, having a doula can give you that level of care, which is really helpful.
Yes.
But just like in advance, tell your doula what your expectations are so that she can be someone that you really lean on during that time.
Yeah. And so I think going into this birth happening so soon after the left for, I'm really grateful and I'm really proud of Akeem because he has really learned to trust the Lord with us and with these decisions, because I think in the beginning it was a lot of fear and control, and now he's like, you know what, I hear you, I hear what you're saying you want and you need, because we had to talk through even like financially, because going through home birth and midwife, it is a financial investment.
Sometimes it's repair insurance,
right. And for us it was a financial decision where we're basically paying for this home birth versus maybe could have gotten free care. But I explained to him, I said, I really want to be taken care of throughout this process. And I don't want to have to fight for anything or fear anything or be put into a category because of what I've just experienced. I really want good care. And he really heard that and he's trusting me with that. And we really came to a good decision of like, hey, now that we've kind of seen what my body does 3 times, we will be quicker to make certain decisions than we did the last time based upon knowing what my body does. And I'm comfortable with that. You're comfortable with that. We will honor that time differently than we did with the last birth. And I feel like we feel really good about it.
That's
so I'm
good.
excited.
Me too. I'm excited for you. I also think that like what people don't understand is that your postpartum care with your midwife vastly different than your postpartum care.
Absolutely.
It's like night and day. Now I can't speak
care
for
in
all
general.
I can't speak for all midwives, but I can tell you that this time around, my midwife came to me, or she stayed with me until like the next day, technically. So like she was with me until like 1 in the morning. She was like, all right, I can come back tomorrow at this time or at this time. And then the next day I can come back at this time or at this time. And she's like, all right, we'll be back in like a week unless you want me here sooner. And then at 3 weeks she came to visit me. I did not have to leave my house. I can't believe that like in America, you deliver a baby and they're like, all right, you can go back to your house now, but we need to see you here in 3 days. Don't lift anything heavy. And you're like going there lugging your newborn.
Literally.
You know, like so sleep deprived. They're like, how are you feeling? And you're like, bad.
Not good.
Really bad.
Because I'm here.
Yes. One of the things that, I mean, Cam and I watched, we were not, part of our story is we weren't planning on having kids in general. So when we got pregnant with Flora, I was very unprepared. But I did have I have a medical background, right? So I'd watched this documentary called The Business of Being Born.
Yeah.
And that documentary was very, very, very helpful with Cam and the way that he viewed birth. He watched the documentary, and this is a very left-brain dude, not very emotional, very logical. He watched the documentary, and he's like, this actually makes a lot of sense to me. I think that if you want to do this, I'm totally down with it. And there was no argument there. I think that for a lot of husbands, it just looks risky and it looks out of control. Yeah. But once you start actually looking into the risks and you start seeing, out of all of the home births, this is how many women come out with birth trauma. This is how many women come out with physical trauma. This is how many women end up with C-sections. This is how many women end up with epidurals. And then you look into the hospital section and you see the risk. Oh, this is how many women have birth trauma. It's a lot. It's over 50% at this point. This is how many cesareans we have. It's like over 30% at this point. This is how many people end up getting epidurals. When you start actually looking at the statistics, you see there's actually a lot of risk in a hospital that people don't know about. And if you have to deliver in a hospital, or if you want to deliver in a hospital, because some will do, then just be prepared for those. There are really great books. I think there's one of them is like Natural Birth in a Hospital. It's like that simple. And it will go through how to have a natural birth in a hospital if that's what you want. But I just think that people just need to look into it and at least have enough humility to be like, I don't want to have a home birth. Like if your husband's, or I don't want to have a home birth, but like always look into it to see what the facts are.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think too, if you're someone who's like, maybe you're the female in the situation that feels actually more concerned about having a home birth than having a hospital birth, like no shame, honor that. Because maybe that's your body telling you something, like
fear is the enemy of labor.
Exactly. Fear is the enemy of labor. Absolutely. And just don't let shame of feeling like, I should, but I just don't feel comfortable. I do think that there are women who have really beautiful birth experiences at the hospital. I think you need to go in very prepared. I think having a doula is definitely like, if you want to have some sort of natural and peaceful birth where you feel empowered and supported, get a doula.
This is my advice to people who want to deliver in hospitals. Know step by step what it's going to be like. When you are arriving at a hospital, are they going to be asking you 15 questions? Probably yes.
Yes, that is part of the process.
And then after that, they're going to right away put a needle in your arm. Do you want that? Do you want hydration? Some women don't care. I'm somebody who wouldn't want a needle in my arm right when I went to the hospital. They're going to tell you to put on a hospital gown. Like you're going to have to like have all these things in your head to be like, no, thank you, no, thank you, no, thank you, no, thank you. Because sometimes I don't think that we get that nitty gritty with the details. And so you're thinking in your head, well, I just want to have a natural birth. You arrived at all these like hospitals, you have people always do Christian. There's a needle in your arm. They're getting undressed. And then like they're telling you to like lay down in the bed. And you're like, wait a second.
Yeah, I don't think you realize like how many people, like I think when you are not in labor and you're just cognitively thinking about labor, it's really easy to look at it from we could talk about anything when we're not in it, right? But then when you're in it, I think you don't realize how of a vulnerable and fragile time that is as a woman to be experiencing something in your body that is so out of this world. And when you're in a hospital and you're experiencing a ton of people that you do not know, who you're technically really not much to them, because you're probably the 30th person they've seen that day, it actually affects you.
It does.
It affects your emotional state, it affects you physically and mentally, and be prepared to just have to process some of that stuff on the other side. And there are amazing providers. There's amazing nurses. Like, I really prayed when we went in both times when I had to go with Zara's birth and Zion's birth. I really prayed for God to like bring me the right nurses. And I really felt like he did that. And there was some really beautiful experiences I had with some of the nurses. And then there were some that I kind of have had to process through, you know, and forgive some nurses. Literally, maybe I need to do that. Yeah. Actually, now that I think about it, I'm like, I need to probably forgive some nurses. But just know that, like, yes, there are probably for some people, there's going to be some pros to being what they feel like are pros to having their birth at the hospital, but also just be aware that, like, there's gonna be some things you're gonna have to process regarding that experience.
For sure. Yeah. And I think that you're right. Like, there are definitely amazing people who work in hospital settings, but if you want to feel known and understood, you're not going to find that in a hospital, because 100%. You're just dealing with all these shift changes. And like, you know, you're not going to know you're okay. Probably, you know, there's just,
exactly.
Yeah.
So what would you say would be some risks and rewards to choosing home birth over hospital birth?
So one thing I want to point out is that a lot of times when people think about the risks of home birth, they're thinking about like something terrible happening to the baby or the mom during like the birth, like birth trauma, which is very real. And that happens. That happens. My midwife comes rolling in with tons of equipment. So my midwife comes in, everything, she has almost everything a hospital would have except for blood. Okay. So I would say that one of the rewards of having a home birth is that, like, from a certified nurse midwife, the risk, of course, is like not having like a NICU right there and not having like blood for like a transfusion. But the reward is that, like, they have a lot actually on them. I would say another really great reward of having a home birth is when your body is relaxed and you are at a naturally peaceful environment. If your home represents peace and comfort and safety and all those things, your body's just going to open up in a much different way than if you're feeling out of place, nervous, worried, sterile, all of those things. Like, all of your senses are firing when you're in labor. You're smelling like the smell of a hospital versus like the smell of like lavender. You know, it's just very different. Yes. And I think that when animals go into labor, they like hide. A cat isn't going to deliver in your bathroom where your kids are taking a bath. You know what I mean? Like, it's weird that we kind of stick women like in these like sterile rooms with like a bunch of like random people coming in and out. So true. It's just not like natural. It's so true. But like, you saw me the last time I was in labor. Like, I was like, okay, I want to go in I labored a lot in my bathroom. Yes, you did. I labored with my eyes shut the entire time. Yeah. I did not want people talking or asking me questions. Like, that's the opposite of like what a hospital room is like. We're just being you're just being interrupted all the time. I want to be focused and inward. And so I think that's like the main, for me, it's like, I delivered now granted it's my first birth, but it took me 18 hours on straight Pitocin. Wow. You know, my births are about 3 hours long at home. Okay. I just get into the zone and I just deliver a baby within a few hours. That's how it goes for me. And I think that's like a huge reward for women. Like, I felt so capable when I was in labor. There was only till when I hit transition is when I was like, oh my gosh, can I do this? And I was like, oh, I had a baby like 10 minutes later. Yeah. I know. It's not wild. It's great.
What made you, because you had Flora, your firstborn, in the hospital and with a midwifery center. Yes, but you kind of that case.
So I was in the DePaul actually just got demolished yesterday. It's crazy. So we had this I was at a midwifery center. I chose midwifery center because of their first birth, and I just thought I didn't know what home birth was like, and I didn't really know anyone who was home birthing in 2016. I was the first of my friends to get pregnant, and they already thought that it was crazy that I was delivering at a birth center. I ended up gaining too much weight essentially, and they basically kicked me out. They said I had low fluids. And I delivered in the hospital, but my body was not ready at all. They started me on Pitocin at 6 a.m. Oh, they put a cervical balloon in me and stripped my cervix. Yeah, so they stripped my cervix, which is uncomfortable. Then they put in the cervical balloon, which is uncomfortable. But when you just have your cervix stripped, it's very uncomfortable. Yeah, I'm sure. And I slept with that in all night. Cool. After they gave me a dose of Dilaudid, which is basically like legal heroin. I didn't know any of that stuff before I know it. It's crazy what you find out later. So I wake up, I haven't dilated at all. They start me on Pitocin drip and they slowly just bump it up, and all
Were
day
you
long.
contracting? Is that why you were there?
I was having contractions eventually from the Pitocin.
How many weeks were you? Were you
I was
42?
41 weeks.
You were 41 weeks?
Yeah.
Okay.
And some change.
Interesting.
And then my blood pressure just started going through the roof because, Pitocin's intense.
Oh, yeah.
After being on it for, I think, 8 to 10 hours, I was unable to cope with the pain I was experiencing, but my pride was too strong to succumb. But when they started talking about C-sections, stroking, magnesium, all these things, I was like, let's try an epidural first. I took it. I got an epidural, took it out. My blood pressure went back down. And then I delivered her probably 6 hours later.
So what made you choose to do a home birth after her?
Oh, I hated the process of delivering in the hospital. I had to get off my Pitocin at least twice during the process of delivering because one of the times it infiltrated me, it went through my vein, pulling at my arm.
Oh, Lord.
I know. And I stopped contracting altogether. I was like, dude, I'm like not ready to have this baby. My body
is saying no.
My body is saying no. My body wants to keep Flora inside.
Wow.
I also hated the process of getting weight. All you want to do, because you're dealing with insurance companies.
Right.
It's not the midwives who really care. It's now you're high risk because now I'm obese.
Okay.
So I just remember being like, I knew before I even had Flora, I was like, I am not going to be doing this again. This stressed me out. The weight gain was just so stressful to me. And all the rules it had for me to follow. When I found my midwife, who was a certified nurse midwife, so my TRICARE insurance would cover it, I told her, I said, listen, I gain a lot of weight and I'm very ill.
Yeah.
I don't know how to stop this train. And she was like, as long as I think you're healthy, I'm going to let you get as fat as you need to get.
Yeah.
And I really appreciate it. And she did. And I got really big. And she saw all the weight just like fall off afterwards. She's like, you're obviously healthy. Your body just gains a lot of weight when you're pregnant.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I love about midwifery care is that they really take you into consideration. Yeah, they don't put you in a box of standard.
Because they don't have to deal with the insurance companies the way that these practices do.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So Cindy's not really that worried about what the insurance companies aren't running the show here. She can kind of take more of a, let me see how you are.
Yeah.
And we'll just kind of see how it goes. She's not saying, okay, because the numbers on the scale say that you're overweight.
Yeah.
Now I'm going to believe that you're overweight. And because you're overweight, you're going to have all these issues. She's like,
right.
You seem fine to me.
There's really a partnership with them. Like they're really considering you as a person.
Yeah.
And you guys get to partner together in that, as opposed to, I feel like, getting kind of, put into boxes.
There's times where Cindy would say, okay, there's a risk for you to go to 42 weeks. Here are the risks. Are you comfortable with that? And I'd be like, yeah, I am. And she's like, okay, great. As long as you know them. It's all about consent, informed consent. So that's a big thing with midwifery. They'll say like, do you have the information to give me a yes on this? And if not, then, and I've watched a lot of people. I've watched people who have gestational diabetes. And the midwife is like, these are the risks of having gestational diabetes. How do you feel about that? And that's putting it back on the mom. And it should be there. It really should be.
Absolutely.
Because if you're in a hospital and that your baby is breached, they're going to be like, okay, we're C-sectioning you. You're like, no, I want to deliver breech. Absolutely not.
Right.
We're just not going to do it.
They do take your power away in that sense. That's a really intense thing to feel when it's your body.
But I think what some women don't know is that they can't actually take your power. You get the choice. If you say, I don't consent to a C-section, guess what the doctors have to do? They have to deliver a breech baby.
So then why do you think we don't know that as a society?
They don't want you to know that. They don't want you to know that they can't kick you out of the hospital, and they're not going to just walk away. The law actually requires them to help you. Like HIPAA requires them to intend no harm, right? So if you start, if they're like, oh my gosh, you're a breech, we have to rush you in for a C-section, and you say, I don't consent, and they're like, well, we can't deliver breech babies. You can say, okay, well, I'm going to deliver this breech baby. They have to help you deliver the breech baby.
Right.
And they'll have to help the baby get on whatever the baby needs after that, because actually breech is just a variation of normal.
Right.
And so like, I know midwives in the area who actually have gone to conferences to retrain themselves on how to deliver breech babies. Wow. We kind of take that out of our education, but OBs used to be educated on how to deliver breech babies.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of, how there's like church history, there's like hospital history.
Oh, yeah.
That a lot of us, I think, which benefit from
which
midwife.
the business of being born goes
Talks
through
about that.
Have you seen that documentary?
I have, but you know what?
It's been a long time.
It's been a long time, and I don't feel like I paid a lot of attention.
Yeah.
I feel like I was like on my phone at the same time.
You and Akeem should watch it tonight. I mean, it's just fascinating. I've watched it multiple times.
Yeah,
I think it's fascinating.
Our doulas for Zara encouraged us to watch it.
the same
So
doulas.
like, yeah, exactly. So that was like 6 years ago. And I can't remember 6 years ago right now what happened in that moment. But I do know I've seen the scenes. I've seen some scenes.
Yes.
But I don't think I fully comprehended it at the time. But I knew after even just my experience, which honestly was a fairly good experience at the hospital.
You did.
With Zara, I knew that there was better.
Yeah.
And I knew I wanted it different.
Well, the good thing about with you and Zara was that you went into labor at 37 weeks with Zara.
I did.
A lot of time, and I know this from experience and from my mom works on the mother baby floor at a hospital. So she is like in it. And my sister now is like works in the NICU, you know, so like, I have a lot of nurses in my family. My mother-in-law's a nurse too. I'm not saying that all doctors are control freaks and narcissists. I'm not saying that. But once you get around 38 to 40 weeks, your OB is going to want to control your birth because it's health for the hospital and for the flow of things. So my mom says that there's probably like 80% women who get induced because the doctor
Would
knows
make it more convenient.
it makes it more convenient for them. It makes the hospital run smoother. You know, you're going to get a bed. You know that you're going to get a baby within a certain amount of hours. I think that like the problem is that informed consent isn't happening with a lot of these women because they don't understand the risk of Pitocin,
Right.
which Pitocin is needed sometimes.
Yes.
I'm not, there's no shame around Pitocin. It's just
I'm grateful for Pitocin. It helped
the
me.
risk, right?
Yeah.
No, the risk.
No,
No. So like
there is a
I have a
risk.
friend who had a C-section and then her next baby, she wanted to try VBAC, which I'm glad she had the option to get that. No one told her about the risk of being put on Pitocin after a VBAC. And she experienced some really unfortunate things after that. And she was very traumatized after. And she was telling me, she was like, I wish I would have never VBAC'd. And I was like, oh my gosh, why? Show me what happened. And I'm like, did they put you on Pitocin? And she's like, yeah. And I'm like, did they warn you about what could happen? And she's like, no one warned me at all.
Why was she on Pitocin after her birth?
Because most hospitals did, oh, you're approaching 41 weeks. If you want to have a natural labor, we're not going to let you go beyond 40 weeks.
Oh, you mean they put her on Pitocin to labor after having a VBAC?
So she had a C-section. And then her next babies, she wanted to have because she had twins. So they sectioned her naturally, which is unfortunate. We didn't do that.
Wow.
So after she's like, I really want to try VBAC. And so I was like, you could go for it. Well, instead of just letting her go into natural labor, they're like, oh, you're 39 and a half weeks. We're just going to put you on Pitocin. It was a shame. And it was, I'm not even going to say what happened, but like, I know that after that, she actually had an elective C-section, her next baby, because she's like, I don't want to go through that again.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Because she didn't know the risks. You need to know every single side effect. You need to know every single side effect, every single risk involved. You need to know that there's fentanyl in epidurals.
Yeah.
You need to know what Dilaudid is. If you're someone who's like recovered from being addicted to painkillers, you should know that like Dilaudid could give you a really bad reaction. You could have a relapse, you know?
Where can people find this kind of information? I mean, like, literally, how do people find this information?
Mama Natural is a really great resource. Her name's Genevieve. She has week-by-week pregnancy. That's a great resource. I also think Business of Being Born is a really great resource.
Do they talk about a lot of that stuff that you're just mentioning? Okay.
They do. But like a lot of it, you're going to have to, like, I always say this, but you're going to be your best doctor. You have to do the research yourself. If you have hepatitis, if you have high blood pressure, if you have whatever, you need to be like doing the dating and being like, what are the risks involved with this? Like, how does this drug affect this? And you just need to be a good doctor for yourself. Also, having like personalized care, having a doula who knows the lingo.
Yes.
Having a midwife, like you need to have people who know the lingo or hire people who know it.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's like probably part of the struggle for a lot of women is that like there's a lot of information, like everything you just said, like that's a lot of information. And like, where do I learn more about that? And not really having like a place to simply go to get that information can feel a little almost like just as fearful or overwhelming. And so some women would rather just like pick the what feels like easier route, the one that we've been the most exposed to.
Yeah.
And so
I think that Mama Natural is a very, very all-inclusive, helpful resource.
Okay, she includes a lot of that
She
information.
has so much information. Even like how to have like a gentle cesarean section.
Nice. Right.
Yeah.
Yes, I do remember hearing
She has a lot of information out there. There's also like Pain-Free Childbirth by Karen. She has a great Instagram account. Christian hypnobirthing. There's a lot of like really positive birth accounts that are really great that you can actually get like really solid information from.
That's awesome.
I have highlight reels on mine with like studies that are linked, but there's a lot of information out there. I would say that a really good place to start though would be Mom and Apple. She has YouTube videos up. She has courses you could take. She has the book Week by Week Pregnancy, which I'll link in the show notes. It's really good.
That's great.
Can you tell me, because I get this question a lot, what do your appointments look like? Your midwifery appointments. I can tell you mine. Like she had like a clinic, and I would go. It was kind of like it looked like Amber's house, but I would go there. She'd take my blood pressure. I would get, I did all of my like labs in there. I peed in those cups. I mean, I did everything I would have done.
Yes.
But just with my midwife. And I got to bring, what was great, she had a playroom, so I got to bring all my kids with me. So they all played in the playroom. I did whatever I needed to do. Like, it was just as professional and low-key. It was, I don't know, it was great.
Yeah, agreed. That's a good question, yeah. Yes, everything you just said, blood pressure, listening to the baby.
They do ultrasounds. You have to get that out elsewhere.
They do encourage a 20-week anatomy ultrasound, which I'm very grateful to have that because it's just comforting for me personally. I had to go to a third party for that personally with my practice that I'm with. And a lot of just questions, a lot of like, hey, how's your diet? How are you moving? How is your body feeling here and there? And how's your body responding here and there? So a lot of very like personalized questions about what's going on with my body, what's going on with my mental state, what's going on with my emotional state. What am I taking? What am I not taking? What do I need to lean into?
They go into your blood work.
Yep, I do blood work several times throughout that process, 10 to 11 weeks. And then again, I'll be doing them again soon. You take a lot of the tests that, you would take through the OB, you can also take through your midwife if you'd like to. And so, it's very professional medical care. It's not very neglectful by any means.
No,
it's the opposite.
They literally they're so attentive.
Yes.
I think there's a lot less malpractice in the midwifery setting because they're not just like you're not just like another like person they're trying to push you out of. They're like, they really take their time with you. Yeah. So I would say like for a bit of practical advice, I'm glad we walked through what the appointment looked like. I'm going to kind of walk through from how I got my first midwife and hired her to like the very end. Mm-hmm. So I found Cindy. She was a certified nurse midwife, which my insurance covered. And that was really important for them to have a certified nurse midwife. Okay. And I had a list of questions. I actually have a printable, downloadable list of questions on my website, flourishingmotherhood.com.
Look at you,
of like
honey.
things to ask your midwife.
That's amazing.
Yeah. So I printed that out and I sat with Cindy and I was like, what do you do for shoulder dystocia? Like when Megan's done.
Great question.
And she answered that right away because she had 10 years experience in a hospital. A lot of these women have experiences in hospitals. What do you do if I have a hemorrhage postpartum? Yeah. What would your plan of action be for this? And I asked her question after question after question. She sat there and answered. If there was any questions that she didn't answer, I don't remember, but she would have gone back to me.
And let's just point in the fact that like you got to interview her.
Yes.
Because you're paying her.
Yes.
For service, which is what happens at a hospital as well or with an OB group. Like you're paying them.
Right.
But you don't get to interview them. You just kind of give it.
They actually act like you work for them and all hospitals versus like, no, you work for me.
Yeah.
I am paying you.
I am paying you, yeah.
This is, it's benign, but you work for me.
Yeah. And that you can't interview. You can bring those questions to multiple midwives to figure out what is the right fit for you.
Exactly. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I did that with my doulas too. I didn't hire the first doula that I interviewed. She didn't be my birth photographer, but I knew what I wanted. And so I interviewed Cindy, and then my next week, like, I got into the system. I started coming in. At first, you come in almost like month by month, if everything's okay. So, and then towards the end of my pregnancy, it was like every other week. And then by the very end of my pregnancy, it was every week from like 42 weeks. And I did everything. I did the gestational diabetes test. I ended up pricking my finger and taking my own because I didn't want to do the glucose test through her. She ordered all the labs I needed. I got my blood work done at the labs I needed. I wanted to get my blood work done at the labs I needed to do. And I did all my P tests in her labs. I mean, I did a lot of it in her office. She did her non-stress test on me in her office, and some people offer that. My ultrasound that I got was done at a place, but like she just made an order for that. And then my postpartum care was amazing. She came around, she did the hearing test on Meadow in my bed.
Yeah.
All the tests that need to be done were done in my home.
Meaning Meadow didn't have to be separated from you and go into a different room.
No.
Being, we don't even know where, being touched by, we don't even know who.
Yes. Yeah. She did everything like right there from the comfort of my home. Yeah. And like just was a friend to me.
Yeah.
But I wish that for you, I don't know if it was different for you.
One of the things I just love as you're talking about this process, I'm like, man, they really do, like when you work with a midwife, they really protect the connection between you and your baby. And I think that when I think about my 2 hospital experiences, like those would be the pain points, right? Like they're not really trying to protect that. Yeah. There's a lot of separation that takes place.
That's true.
And I think that's something for you guys to consider, if you're on the fence or you're just considering home birth, like if you really care about just that full connection, which is so important when this baby comes out of your body and into this world with lights and air and all the things, you're going to experience that with a midwife, and that they really honor you being connected to them, not them being connected to them, to get these.
They do. I mean, I even remember like this last time because I tear every birth.
Yes.
And this is just part of my birth story. I'm kind of prepared for it now. And Cindy was prepared for that, of course.
Okay.
She stitched me up on my couch and in the bed, where baby. But she always makes sure that the baby's on my chest.
Yeah.
Like she's not like, all right, like let's clear the area. Like she's just like, make sure you keep the baby on you. Nurse your baby. Look at your baby. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like she's very, even I remember the first time I had a home birth with Cindy, she's delivered 3 of my babies now. And I look at her, she's like part of my family. Like, I love Cindy.
Yeah.
And I remember the first time I had my baby, I really wanted Cam to hold Clementine. And I was like, Cam, where we get baby? And she's like, just hold her for a half hour.
So good.
Because just the first 2 hours, she's like, just hold your baby.
So good.
That did not happen with Flora. I tell you this, they were scrubbing Flora. They were literally washing Flora. I was sitting there
holding her up in the light and on the thing and stretching her out,
doing all these things, and I'm
totally.
Like, can you just give me my baby back?
100%.
I remember there's actually a nurse that's
so unnatural.
Another nurse. They were like, hey, can you just give her baby back? Like she was like watching my distress because I was just like watching them like rub this baby down, and I'm like, I really want to hold her.
Yes.
Yeah. It's crazy.
I think that's where like having fairly good hospital experiences, you feel that as a mom having just birthed a baby, you feel
an intrinsic connection to Y and B.
And when it's been separated, when it's been broken, which is what kind of your experience is like in the hospital, outside of you advocating very strongly, you feel it in your body. There's like little low keys levels of trauma from that, and when I was in the hospital for Zion, I kept saying, and I remember like all these nurses would give me like head in the deer light looks, because again, I basically never let them take him back to the nursery to do any tests. Can you do it here? Like there's no need for him to be out of my sight.
Yeah, you're not taking this baby away.
Yeah, and I had to really fight for that because I felt it in my body from my 2 births prior. That trauma came up again of like that separation. And so just be really good with using your voice. Yeah. If you do find yourself in the hospital or you choose to be in the hospital, be really good at saying what you need.
And one thing I always tell women, this, you do not need to make rushed decisions. So absolutely. There are times, very, very rarely, where they need a decision to come out of your mouth in 30 seconds. Yeah. But most of the time, you can say, I'll get back to you on that. I'm not sure yet. Give me a minute. I want to think about this first. I want to pray about this. I want to talk to my husband about this. I want to call a friend about this. I'm not calling a doula about this. Like whatever it be. Do not let the pressure of their system, of the nurses or the doctor's system, because, time is money. It's a business. Ultimately, at the end of the day, it's a business, which is like why it's called Us Being Born, that documentary. But do not let that pressure that they feel become pressure for yourself. So if you're like, there's moms who like don't know how they feel about circumcision. They don't know if they're having, there's moms who think they're having a girl, they end up having a boy, and they're like, all right, we're going to circumcise him now. And you can be like, hold on, let me just think about this for a second. Yeah. I'll come back to this. Yeah. Oh, I remember when we moved forward, where I'm like, all right, Hep B, what, you sign off on it. I'm like, I haven't even thought about Hep B. I don't even know what you guys offer.
What is it even for?
What does that mean?
Okay, I've literally never been with anyone else. Why do I need to do that?
Right. Yeah. Right.
I think there's so much more that could be said about this. And if you guys have any other specific questions, we would love to be able to answer that, because we're just kind of sharing our perspective, our experiences, what we've kind of learned from different birth experiences. But if there are some specific questions that you need answers to or would like direction on where you can go to find that, let us know in the comments. Let us know, write us a message, direct message us, because we would love to point you in the right direction and resource you. We don't want to just like tell you a bunch of information and then kind of leave you lost. But you had mentioned a few. So if you could just name that documentary one more time and the really great website that has a lot of that information, just so people have somewhere to point to.
Yeah. So the Business of Being Born is a really great place to watch the documentary, learn about home birth. And then our Mama Natural is a really great resource. She has week by week pregnancy. Her name's Genevieve. She's also on Instagram. My website, flourishingmotherhood.com, that has the printable what to ask for midwife list. I also have my birth story from Theo on there. And then my YouTube channel, Flourishing Motherhood, has my home birth from a meadow, which you're in.
And on.
So it has like 48,000 views already.
Oh my gosh, it's so beautiful.
So that's all we have for you guys this time. We will for sure revisit this, especially because you're about to have a home birth. So,
oh my gosh, we're
in a few months
about
so we're going to be talking about on here. But thank you guys for sharing your time with us, and we will talk to you guys next time.